You're listening to Cinema Rex. It's an Iranian film podcast. Episode 8, Farcical, The Night of the Hunchback.
You should get 2 more dogs and name them Cinema and Rex.
I'll just change this guy's legal name.
Is Cinema a boy's name or a girl's name for a dog?
Girl, 100%.
Why? Because it ends in an A?
Let's go with yes.
That makes sense.
One second. Just right now, this dog's wanting my attention, so I'm going to give it to him before we actually start.
Okay.
Here, go. Be cute. I've got a question for you. How do you feel if I start doing this? It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Ugh.
Everywhere we look, and the prettiest sight you see is the holly that you bring.
Ugh.
Well, it's Christmas time.
It's Yalda.
It's Yalda time.
Yeah.
It's Christmas time.
Listen, Covet.
Hanukkah just
I have
ended.
a post-colonial mindset.
I mean, you don't need to have a pre-colonial mindset to put some decorations on a tree.
I don't know.
So I guess you cringe at the thought of Christmas, right?
Christmas is capitalist tomfoolery.
Aren't you a big proponent of Valentine's Day, though?
No. Black Friday, though, that's my jam.
Yeah, you celebrate.
I celebrate Black Friday. See, Black Friday for me is like, as much as I hate capitalism, I also can't refuse an opportunity to save. So that's where my frugality comes to head with my ethical dilemmas.
Well, then you should be a huge, because you like to save.
Uh-huh.
You know who saves?
Who?
Jesus saves.
Jesus wasn't born in December.
Yeah, but he saves. Jesus saves. And Christmas is about making sure you spread the word of Christ.
Okay, and where does this tree factor in?
I think Jesus decorated the first tree after Moses had brought him presents and he didn't know where to hide them. So Jesus and Santa went tree hunting with machetes.
I feel like all of our older crowd who typically listens to this podcast and they're like, well, I really like Kava. He's so insightful. They're all listening right now. They're like, what an idiot.
This guy knows nothing about Christ, our Lord and Savior.
Or history or Dusan Aziz. Welcome to the Cinema Rex podcast.
You forgot the first part.
What's the first part?
Durud Bar Shema Dusan Aziz.
Okay. Do you want to do it?
We'll just go through. You want to go for it? You want to do it once now?
I'll do it. Yeah. Durud Bar Shoma Dustan Aziz. Welcome to the Cinema Rex podcast.
I'm Kaveh Mohebi.
And I'm Farhan Moradi.
Well, also no, but there's the other thing I do where I go, welcome to the Cinema Rex podcast where we talk all things Iranian.
That's what I thought. When I went like this, I was cueing you to say that.
I was supposed to know that.
Okay, let's try one more time. One more time. You say that part, and then you say the I'm Kaveh Mohebi, and then I'll jump in with I'm Farhan Moradi. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Durud Bar Shoma Dustan Aziz. Welcome to the Cinema Rex podcast.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Oh, sorry. Was that not what you wanted?
Oh my god!
Where we talk all things Iranian film and cinema. I'm Kaveh Mohebi,
and I'm Farhan Moradi.
We're here today to talk about I have a little bit of a concern about talking about this film because I've noticed the numbers of viewership or listeners, and depending on our biggest numbers come from how popular the film is. And this is a film that I think would probably be arguably the least popular film we've done so far.
Oh, for sure. Like even some of the cinephiles that we've had as guests on the show that I'm like, oh, these people are like walking encyclopedia on Iranian cinema, hadn't heard of this film.
Yeah. So to the 4 of you who are going to be listening to this, welcome to the show. We're really happy you tuned in. The film is, of course, called, you say it in English, I'll say it in Farsi.
Okay, Night of the Hunchback.
Shab Ghuzi, which is a very funny comedy from the 1960s directed by
Farrokh Ghaffari. I read it in Farsi this time because I got people sliding into my DMs like crazy after the separation episode telling me that I got Maodi's name wrong. They're like, it's not Muayyedi, it's Maodi. But I don't know, because like a few people have told me it's Maodi, but then at the Mehmouni that we had with like all those Iranian filmmakers, an argument broke out where like some people were like it's Maadi, and then some people said it was Maedi. But I read it in Farsi, and my very rudimentary literacy of Farsi script, I read it now as Maadi, but I could be wrong.
This self-conscious nervous breakdown that you're currently experiencing is the reason I leave all of the Iranian pronunciations to other people. Either you or Sadaf or Mertash take over for me.
Yeah, that's fair. So this director, what's his name? How do you say his name? Kaveh. Go.
Farrokh Ghaffari.
Yeah. Yeah.
Farrokh Ghaffari.
Yeah, nailed it.
1965 film, Night of the Hunchback, Shabbat Ghuzi. I pronounced that one okay, right?
Yeah. If you didn't get that GH properly,
yeah, you got to give back your Iranian credentials.
Yeah, because then you're saying Shabbat Ghuzi, which is
Night of the Farter.
Yeah.
I first heard about this film from Arash Ashtiani, who we've had on our show. We interviewed him, rather. We haven't really had him as a co-host yet. He was the actor. He's the director, writer, producer, and he was the actor in Holy Spider. I once asked him for a list of films that he highly recommends that aren't your classic staple. You know, people talk about Iranian films. They talk about Kiarostami. They talk about Farhadi. They might talk about Makhmalbaf. But I was like, who are some of the like lesser known kind of like classic Iranian films? And this one was like really high on his list. So he was like, check it out. Night of the Hunter. And he didn't give me any other context.
Night of the Hunchback.
With like, Night of the Hunchback. Night of the Hunter is another fantastic film that is not an Iranian film. But so can you tell me a little bit about, tell me and the audience that your experience, because you were in New York and at the MoMA, they were doing sort of a week-long retrospective of Iranian cinema, right?
Yeah, it was actually more than just a week. It was going on for a while. It was a few months. It was really interesting because like almost every day, they had one or two films playing. Sometimes they'd be paired with short films or short documentaries. And most nights they had, I think like not most nights, but maybe like once or twice a week, they had people come in and also do Q&As. And the film prints that they had, or I guess like digital scans, were all incredibly well scanned. Mm-hmm. Like they were very good quality. I know that there was talks to try to bring some of those screenings to LA. I reached out to TIFF to try to bring some of these screenings, and TIFF politely declined, which I was a little shocked about. So
nice for them to do it politely.
Yeah, the 5 listeners of the podcast, feel free to hit up some TIFF folks in their emails and request this. But we will likely be reaching out to the MoMA programmers to try to bring some of these screenings to Toronto soon. Mm-hmm. And potentially try to start doing monthly Iranian film screenings or bi-monthly film screenings in 2025 in Toronto. So be on the lookout.
Not next year?
Sorry, 2024.
Oh. Because I was like, why give us a 12-month gap?
Yeah, no. Imagine.
Surely this can't be that hard of a project to ascertain.
No. Yeah, hopefully, I think we're looking at potentially February for the first one. Mm-hmm. And then monthly after that. But I'm going to try to reach out and connect with the programmers at MoMA and see if we can get access to the same source files that they use, because they're incredible quality. Like the version that you have, Kaveh, that you gave me of the film to like go back over and kind of refresh my memory on was not nearly as good as the quality that they had. Like it was a very good quality scan.
Oh, of course. If they're screening it on a big thing.
Yeah. The turnout was great. I wasn't expecting it. And after the film, they played a documentary about the life of Farrokh Ghaffari. And when we get into, I guess, behind the scenes and stuff, we can talk about his life a little more. He's a really interesting guy, and he's I take a lot of inspiration from him now with some of the things that we're trying to do with Iranian cinema in the diaspora.
I didn't know there's a documentary about him. I know there's a Vusuri documentary that I might have played there, but they produced it this year. And I also, when I had coffee with my good friend, Bahman Farminar, he told me that he was a guest speaker at MoMA when you were there too. So you guys had just missed each other. He was there. They did a few They did a retrospective on some of his films, and he came to speak. They flew him in from Iran, and that was actually the reason why he came to Toronto shortly after. Where we had grabbed coffee with him. Did I not tell you that he was there the same time as you?
You did, but I think we were trying to figure out what days he was there.
You're right, yeah. So Night of the Hunter, I'm really excited about this film. I really liked it.
Night of the Hunchback.
Oh my goodness, Night of the Hunchback. That is going to happen so many more times. Night of the Hunchback, I've seen twice now, and I really have liked it both times. It is a comedy. It's like a broad, almost slapstick comedy, which I felt was like pretty interesting. Let me just dive right into a short version of the plot summary, and then maybe you and I can collectively discuss some of the major beats in the storyline, just so that those who have not seen the film can get a good sense of what happens. Essentially, the IMDb plot summary of Night of the Hunchback says, adapted from the famous collection of Middle Eastern folk tales, 1001 Nights, and set in a popular theater troupe, the story follows the death of an actor in a farcical accident and the brilliantly elaborate gags and misunderstandings that abound in subsequent attempts to dispose of his body. That's just a very brief synopsis, but do you want to just collectively go over some of the major beats?
Yeah.
I'll start. You just dive in wherever you feel I might have missed up something or you want to add something. But essentially, we start with a group of it's like a traveling theater group. They're like jugglers, dancers, comedians, musicians, kind of clowns.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, I think they're spending one night doing two shows. They're doing like a theatrical show, but then they have to hurry because they have like they're kind of putting on a performance at this like this man and woman, sort of like noble higher class. They're kind of like performing at the house party, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they get there, they finish the show, and the woman tells the one actor who has a hunchback and is playing the role of a hunchback, she gives him a secret note saying, listen, this is the list of names and addresses. If the cops find this, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Please deliver this to someone they call the master, which you just kind of don't find out who it is right away. And they give the actors a bunch of food to go and the chef at this like nice house is like, take all this food with you, enjoy like a nice picnic. They go out in the woods, they start eating, they make this picnic, they start like playing around, and essentially horseplay, which is like they essentially start force feeding each other food in a joking way.
One thing you missed is that just as he finishes the show, he goes to like a physician or something who's there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm having like really bad chest pains."
Yeah, after every performance, he complains that he's like he can't catch his breath, and he's like his heart feels weak. So, the woman and man who are with this hunchback actor who has the note in his pocket, they start jokingly force feeding him bread and food and covering his mouth, to which results in him essentially, he can't breathe, his heart stops, and he dies right there in front of them. And there's a little bit of a farcical element because it's all handled with like a touch of comedy and levity. These two actors don't even think he's dead. They think he's joking around. Once they realize that he actually is probably dying, their first instinct is let's get him to a doctor ASAP, but it's the middle of the night. They don't know where to drag this body. As they enter the streets, they notice there's cops around. So they decide to leave the body in an alleyway and deal with him later. Enter the B plot, which is this hair salon sort of attendant. He's on a secret mission to also smuggle
drugs.
What we don't know, the drugs, contraband that's in a box, essentially from Iran to France.
Disguised as gags, which is like a Persian nougat.
Right, yeah. And his flight's leaving in 2 hours, and his boss is saying, "Are you ready to go?" Whatever. He's like, "Yes, I can't wait." He's nervous, but he's excited about going to France.
Yeah, he's treating this trip to France as like a trip to France.
Yeah.
But the guy who's, I guess, his boss or whatever, who's like, "Oh, you have to take the contraband." He's like, "You're not even staying there long. Like, you're just going there, you're handing this off, and you're coming back."
Well, and I got the feeling that there was a sense that he was never going to come back, too. There was some sense that I feel like this is his ticket out of here because of how much he was romanticizing this trip.
Maybe.
But he steps out. He, of course, finds the dead body of our hunchback, and first instinct is to inform the cops of his dead body, but he realizes that if the cops show up, there's going to be questioning, interrogation. He's going to be left. He's going to miss this flight. So his first instinct is to bring it into the hair salon and call his boss and say, "We have a problem. Like, there's a dead body here. I can't just leave it, but I can't call the cops. What should we do?"
Yeah. And I mean, like, we don't need to get into every beat of where he goes, but basically what ends up happening over the course of the film is he gets this dead body gets passed around from like group to group to group. Like at one point he ends up, like, the dead body ends up left by like left near a house party, and then it gets left near the courtyard of some guy who's like trying to force his daughter to get married, and then it gets like left in the street, and some guy thinks he's asleep and drunk and robs the body. Like the body just keeps moving from place to place, and eventually the papers that have a list of, you said smugglers, right?
Yeah.
On it, the identities of smugglers.
Yeah.
That ends up getting moved from person to person. So it's basically a game of hot potato with this carcass.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the film, you find out that he didn't die via foul play. He actually just had a heart attack.
Right. Which might have been brought on by the foul play, but
Maybe.
Or horseplay.
It was like pretty heavily implied when he has that scene with the physician that he's probably already had a heart attack like that night, and
That's
he's
true,
like
right.
dying.
The main thing I was going to say about the two actors is they quickly they sort of fall into the backdrop of the rest of the film, because they tell the woman who was the host that our friend has died, and they don't even know that she's given him the secret list.
Mm-hmm.
So for the rest of the film, the hostess takes it upon herself to track it down, because she tells her husband, the list is with him. He's dead. If we don't get that list back, our lives are ruined. So the four main events that are following is this hostess trying to find the body, the hair salon and his boss who are trying to get out of the town, but they can't because of they're now feeling responsible for finding the body. The father of this bride who's living in the neighborhood, who thinks that the body is a burglar, so he hits him over the head and thinks he's responsible for killing the guy. And the party that's going on upstairs. And I will get to this, but I really loved the use of the party because there's not really any main characters. It almost seems just like a constant obstacle for everyone involved. But the music from the party is constantly playing throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. Almost like the score of the film is the music playing from the party.
And all that music is like copyrighted music from the US or like from Europe, which they can just use because Iran did not sign any copyright agreements with anybody. So there's like Ray Charles music playing throughout the film.
Well, and the crazy thing too about it is it has such a sense of modernity and cool. Like it's like 60s swing or 50s swing and a lot of 60s rock.
Yeah. And
it's just kind of is diegetic to the entire film, but every scene it just keeps like you suddenly realize the song this like soundtrack has been playing in the background of the entire film because they can hear it through the walls.
Yeah.
And it makes it really set itself apart from other Iranian films, I think, that I've seen so far, to have this kind of score.
Yeah.
Undercurrent throughout the entire film. Let's start with our favorite thing ever. Both of our favorites thing ever. It's Kaveh's opening scene corner.
Okay.
The scene where we talk about what the very first shot of the film.
I like that we still don't have like a proper name for this, and every time it's just like a word salad.
Yeah, it's just a mouthful. Do you remember what the opening shot of the film is?
Yeah, it's like a fake moon. It's like a fake crescent moon that's been created as like a piece of set decoration for the play.
Right. Opening shot is the crescent moon, followed by the thing that I drew the most attention to is the
doll,
the effigy, or I considered it like an effigy.
Yeah,
it's just like a demon with like flashing eyes and horns. It's supposed to be the hunchback, but it's like hanging, and it almost looks like a hanging man. Mm-hmm. Like a hanged man. Mm-hmm. And then you realize that this is just kind of like a prop and display for the theater that we're about to see. Mm-hmm. Is there any meaning that you could extrapolate from the crescent moon and the effigy of a...
I mean, to me, it's like, okay, night. Like you see the moon of the Hunchback. Like it's like right there. It's like shot to shot. It's like the title of the film. That's what I got from it. But I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I just think like the imagery of the first thing you're seeing is night, and then what looks like, yes, it's like a prop display, but it's not quite hanging from its neck, but it just very much looked like an executed man, like hanging. Like I don't know, it just was an interesting. There was no deeper analysis there other than it was just interesting. So one of the things that I really like about this film, we talked about this a few seconds ago, is that because of all the activity of the house party going on, the music, and all these kind of neighboring homes and businesses, I felt the movie feels very alive constantly. It always feels like there's something going on. You're hearing the music from the party upstairs. There's cops talking to people in the street corner. There's all these intersecting. It almost has this like almost like a Pulp Fiction-y kind of thing where there's all these different converging story threads that overlap with another. and it doesn't really slow down. And I feel like this is a movie you can recommend to a lot of people because it once the Hunchback dies from the horseplay, which is 10-15 minutes into it, the story kind of has like a really cool, in my opinion, momentum and a lot of energy. It's not
Well,
like,
once they get the body into town. Because there's a little bit where they're
Yes.
like trying to sneak him into town. And then it's like dark and they're like trying to make sure that a cop doesn't see them carrying the body because they're like, we don't want it to look like we killed this guy. And then they find that old man who gives them really obscure directions to like where the doctor is. And then they can't make it to the doctor because now they get into town and there's a party going on. There's cops on the street, blah, 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 and then it really picks up.
Yeah, and even that guy, and I don't want to spoil future sections we're talking about, but the guy who's talking about directions ends up just kind of focusing on telling a story about his daughter instead of talking about directions. There's a waiter at the party because at one point they noticed that a lot of the people at the party are dancing on the rooftop. So they need to like carry the body over the rooftop to get across town. This is the hair salon guy and his boss.
Oh, that's okay. I was like, why do they keep trying to take the body to the rooftop? Okay, that makes sense.
I think they were just trying to drag it across town, but not go from the streets because the cops are on the street level.
Okay, I got you.
And when they're there, you know, all the people are dancing at the party, and someone's like, "Hey, there's like a magician downstairs doing tricks." So they all run downstairs, like, "Okay, now's our time to go." But as soon as they go, the waiter comes up to collect drinks, and you notice the waiter's like taking the sips from the rest of the drinks and slowly getting drunk.
Yeah,
like that's such a fun character moment. It's very like Coen Brothers-y too, to have this like small role of a waiter collecting drinks, but he's like throughout the night, like just getting more and more drunk. It reminded me of Peter Sellers is in a very problematic film called The Party. Have you seen it?
No.
Peter Sellers essentially is in brownface. He plays an Indian. He does the Indian accent. And it's about like he's very Chaplin-esque, clumsy kind of fool who doesn't belong in this party. Peter Sellers played the Pink Panther. He was the detective in those Pink Panther movies. British actor. But there's this one backdrop story of like one of the waiters constantly just getting drunker and drunker through the night. And it's very funny. And this reminded me of that. There was also a line, and I don't know if you caught this. It's not even in the subtitles, but at one point,
the subtitles were French.
The subtitles were French. I actually had an SRT file that had it in English.
Oh,
so I just
interesting.
like overlapped that.
Interesting. When watching it at MoMA was so annoying because it was like they were speaking in Persian. Right?
Yeah.
And then there's the French subtitles baked into the image because I think the original film print has the French subtitles burnt in. And then there were English subtitles underneath it. So I was just like getting subtitles. And I speak all three languages.
Yeah.
So like all three of them were super distracting to me.
Well, and they're all slightly different too.
Yeah, they're all slightly different. And you can, and the English translations, at least what I saw at MoMA, the English translations were translated from the French subtitles.
Yeah, that's right.
And the French subtitles took some liberties from the dialogue on screen.
This house party at one point, like, so the host of the original party that needs to track down this paper with the list of names, she shows up and she's trying to find where the body is. And she recognizes one of the women who's going to the party that's on the rooftop. So her friend's like, "Oh, are you coming to Farouk's party?" Is the name of the party, which is the director's name, right? Mm-hmm. And then she's like, "Oh, I wasn't going to go." And it's like, "Who is that?" He goes, "Oh, it's the same guy who was the yoga teacher in New York."
Yeah.
The line is specifically said, this was the yoga teacher.
Yeah.
When have you ever in your life, in any Hollywood American movie from the 60s, heard someone reference a yoga teacher? Think about this. This is the era of like Hitchcock, Kubrick. I mean, like yoga was, I mean, it's been around for a very long time, but I feel like it became part of more like Western culture, sort of like adopted it more recently. And I mean, more recently within our lifetime. But like, you don't see in pop culture that much in films, people talking about yoga teachers.
Yeah.
Do you?
No.
I was pretty shocked about that. It just felt incredibly modern, this movie, or ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I felt like the director had a very strong fascination with Western culture, Eastern culture, and wanting to like pop music, yoga references. And in fact, you know, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning, you know, he's in this film, the director.
Yeah. He plays the hairstylist. Yeah.
He's the hairstylist who first discovers the dead body and has to call his boss. He's the guy who's planning to go to France.
Yeah.
So
the director is actually, he first studied in Belgium and then in France. So he's actually lived in France. So this whole thing of him going to France is like, I think, a nod to that a little bit. And that's also why as he like slips in a little bit of like French idiosyncrasies and stuff when he's fantasizing about going to Paris.
Mhm.
That's actually like things that he's picked up. And I also really like there's a scene where it transitions to like the airplane. And you think you're hearing you're seeing an airplane and like the sound of an engine, but it's really just like a like cutout. Yeah, it's a cutout of an airplane on like a shot of the sky that he has like on his like mirror or whatever, because he's like ready. He's like getting in the mood to go to France, and he's shaving with an electric trimmer.
Yeah, that felt like a Naked Gun joke again too. Like that really thing. And so I didn't know that thing about him like living in France and Belgium, but knowing that the director inserts himself in this film as a character who's obsessed about going to France or excited to go to France. But he says because he says,
I love that.
He said, because I was about to quote him in Farsi, so I started switching. He goes, Chamedun, Habopema. Chamadun, Habopema. And he's like, just like remember he starts repeating those two words over and over again. Like he's like leaning on the mannequin, like whimsically being like, any minute now, I'm going to grab my suitcase and go on the plane. So he's excited. And
and I also like when it cuts to him, it's kind of cut like a dialogue scene between the mannequins.
Yes. We'll get to that. We'll get to. Yes, you can say whatever you want about that. I will get to that scene later.
Okay, we'll get to it.
But it's because it's shot very much. Well, yes. The one thing I kept writing as a note too was this is 110% a farce. Like this film is, which was also very famously known as French farce. Like the French did it first. It's like a 15th century form of like entertainment that used elements of clowning, acrobatics, caricature. And it was almost like this, like, again, Pink Panther-y. But
like an absurdist comedy.
Absurdist, slapsticky comedy. Highly exaggerated, extravagant, ridiculous, absurd.
Yeah.
It became very popular, like almost like Frasier became very well known for being farcical, where it's like, I don't know if have you seen many Frasier episodes back in the day?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, so it's always like, oh, Daphne's in the room with this thing, and she can't let Daphne know that Niles is in the other room.
How old are you? Like, why were you watching? Like, I know you.
I wasn't watching Frasier. It was on in the 90s. It was on at the same time as Friends and Seinfeld. I don't think if I made those references, it would be.
But I feel like Frasier was for an older crowd. Like, you were not the prime demo of Frasier.
I didn't watch a lot of Frasier, like I watched Friends or Seinfeld. But yes, definitely. Well, you just said yourself you've seen a lot.
No, I said unfortunately I've seen some Frasier.
Oh, okay. Frasier was underrated, but I have not seen more than maybe
I don't know.
20, 30 episodes.
Maybe I would appreciate it more now that I'm a man. But,
well, the reboot just came back, so you can start there and work your way backwards.
Yeah. One of our friends is in the reboot.
Who? Kelsey Grammer?
No. Jess Salguero. She came to the after party for Jasmine Mozafari's film at TIFF, Motherland.
It's a name drop right there.
Yeah, anyway. So she's in Frasier.
Does she play Niles?
She plays Eve.
That's close enough.
She was also in The Boys.
Girl Niles. But yeah, just to finish that thought, it's clearly inspired by French farce, a farcical film. This guy loves clearly French cinema, French culture, and he was kind of bringing his version of that to the Iranian stage.
Yeah, and 100%. And like in the documentary, they talk about that, about how when he was in France and Belgium, he got really into that like French what was it called?
New Wave?
French. No, French.
Niles?
Stop talking. French absurdist comedies.
Right, yeah.
Neo-realist films. So he got really into those. And so he brought his first film in Iran, South of the City, was considered the first neo-realist film in Iranian cinema. And then later, House of the Hunchback is considered the first absurdist comedy. And so he's apparently considered the founding father of the Iranian New Wave movement. Because even when you watch this film, it's very much shot like those film Farsi movies, like the way that it's filmed, Like it doesn't quite have the same kind of cinematography that a movie like The Cow does. And people are still putting on a lot of those old-timey voices. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Which the English equivalent of it would be like when you watch movies and they're like, and then the man came around the corner and he went into the shop. Like those like fake voices that people put in movies. Like Iranian cinema definitely had that, especially in the 50s and 60s. So this movie still has that, but then there's a lot going on in the story. So it's this weird like transitionary film that uses some of the stylistic elements of film farsi, but then it's also adopting a lot of these like French New Wave styles of storytelling, which was an interesting kind of stepping stone I found.
Yeah, no, it's cool. He's bridging the gap between those two worlds. It's I don't know. I can't get over the fact that it's just very different than a lot of the films of that era. Like this came out around the same time as The Cow, and aesthetically, you might just think these are a bunch of 60s era actors in a black and white film, but they could not be more different tonally.
What year did The Cow come out?
There was a podcast I listened to recently that did a good breakdown of this.
Yeah, it's 69. Came out in 69.
Yeah,
This one
is 65.
Yeah, this was 65. Yeah. Have you looked at how many movies he's made? Like how many feature-length films he's made?
No.
He only made 4.
Oh, okay, yeah. I knew of the 3. I didn't know if there was much more than that.
Yeah, he only made 4. And there's a conscious reason for it, but we can talk about it when we get to behind.
Okay, great. The one other thing that I wanted to mention was, again, I referenced, when do you hear yoga referenced in films? Do you remember? So the old man whose daughter doesn't want to get married, he's the old man who thinks he sees a burglar. It's the dead body. He hits him over the head and thinks he's responsible for the cause of death, right? He's wearing a do-rag.
Wait, what? I did not pay attention to that.
For long stretches of the film, he's wearing a do-rag. And I literally had to stop the film and like Google the history of do-rags, because it's not something that looks like a do-rag. Or he's fully wearing the do-rags that are commonly known as an identity-making fashion choice in black culture.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Are you seeing the scene right now?
Yeah. I wonder, is he like perming his hair?
I don't know what he's doing because he's bald on top of everything. Isn't he mostly bald?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, maybe he's got like a weird like what's that called when you have like a lot of hair on the top of your head?
It doesn't even look like that because later he's not wearing it. He just looks like a bald guy.
Oh yeah, you're right.
But like I looked on the Wikipedia page on the do-rags and they go back as the 1930s. But because at one point I was like, was it like something in the broader culture outside of black culture that wore do-rags? No, but it's like in the 1930s during the Harlem Renaissance and Great Depression, the do-rag was used to maintain hairstyles. During the Black Pride movement of the 60s and 70s, do-rags became a fashion statement. In the 90s, do-rags were further popularized by rappers like Jay-Z, Nelly, and 50 Cent. So cool.
Guaranteed it's something else. Like there's got to be some other reason for it. For
sure.
And I'm sure
but there was nothing about
somebody is writing me a message in my DMs right now explaining to me what the cloth on his head is.
Okay, so you don't think, but it's not like, but that is a do-rag though. It might be also something else, but that is unmistakably a do-rag.
It's not. No, I don't think so. Because I'm looking at it now, and it's like it's pretty short too. I can see why you would be like I would also probably describe it as a do-rag, but I don't think that's actually a do-rag.
Before we get into the specific sections, I also want to say the greaser in the leather jacket, who's the last guy that stumbles upon the body, that kind of results in the final showdown because the host, the hostess and her husband finally track down where the note is, and the greaser has taken it. So they're like, listen, we'll pay you money. We'll do a handoff. This list is very important to us. He's like, I want $100,000. They do like a showdown, and then they try to get the money. This greaser, he's drunk leaving a bar. He finds the dead body. He takes the money from his wallet, and he goes back to the bar to pay his tab.
Yeah.
And you know what he left? You remember what he left as collateral?
Yeah. He leaves his helmet and his goggles and his gloves, and he leaves all this stuff and like a windshield mask thing that like goes over his face, like everything that he needs for a motorcycle. But he doesn't.
But hold on.
Okay.
But the thing is, as they're doing this, the slow burn is there's two guys at the bar laughing at him, and they just keep laughing and mocking him, and you don't know why yet. You're like, okay, so are they laughing because he's drunk or he's paying his tab? Like, that seems pretty commonplace in a place like this anyways. And then he goes, They're laughing, and he finally tells them. He puts his foot on their table. He goes, "I bought the boots, I bought the pants, I bought the jacket." He's pointing to the leather jacket. "I got the gloves and the goggles." And he's like, "And one day I will get the motorcycle too."
Yeah.
And then he like jumps on an invisible, like non-existent motorcycle, like a 6-year-old, and goes, meh, 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 meh. And he like rides out of the store on like a non-existent motorcycle.
But before he rides out of it, he just like sits there and he keeps like revving the engine of this fake thing, just staring them down. And then eventually
Like a child.
they go from being like laughing at him to being like scared of him, and then he goes out, and then he meets the girl, and then he like snaps out of his motorcycle impression.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a funny, like, slow turn of events because this guy looks like a 50s sort of greaser, like Grease guy, you know, from like a Travolta from Grease.
Yeah.
And he seems so badass and menacing, and then you're like, oh, this guy's just like a child. Like he's just dreaming of one day owning a motorcycle. Yeah. And he doesn't even, he's bought all the things for it except for the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was good. I like that a lot. Shall we jump to behind the scenes and trivia?
Sure. Is that your impression of the motorcycle?
Yeah. The film script was based on a story from 1001 Nights, but arranged for modern city life in Tehran. This was Ghafari's third film after Junub Shar.
Yeah.
And Arus Kudume.
Yeah.
The south of the city, and Which One is Bride? Which one is bride? That's the Wikipedia translation. Where's the bride? Which one is the bride? Yeah.
Who is the bride? Who is the bride?
Who is the bride? Yes. Which both don't have good grossing.
Which one of person is bride?
Yeah. Jalal Moghadam, another intellectual film director, and George Lechensky, an Iranian-Assyrian cinematographer, encouraged Ghafari to make this film. And at first, the story was set in the medieval times, as the ancient stories of 1001 Nights had occurred. However, the censorship office forced Ghafari to turn the story of the film to a modern setting. I'm reading translation straight off the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And kudos to whoever wrote this, but I'm also like reading it in subpar English because I'm reading it word for word.
Yeah. Basically,
yes, he wanted to make this film set in medieval times because that's where 1001 Nights is set.
Yeah.
But the censorship office forced them to make it modern, which I don't know why. I can't find further information as to why, but that's a weird specific ask that the censor office.
I suspect because it was set during the time of an Islamic caliphate.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big push during the Pahlavi dynasty to secularize depictions of Iran as much as possible.
Well, because isn't 1001 Nights also Arabic stories?
Not the original. The original is Persian. It is? Okay. Yeah. So 1001 Nights was originally taking Persian myths and Persian stories and like little fables and stuff. They also took fables from some of the surrounding areas. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was like one or two Arab stories in there, but it was later repackaged as with more Arabic parables put in, like mixed in.
Yeah.
And that's why later a lot of Europeans started calling it Arabian Nights. But the original version of...
Yeah, that's why I thought...
the original version is called 1001 Nights. And it's a compilation of Iranian fables where every night this woman... Okay, so the premise of 1001 Nights is this prince marries a woman, and after they're married, he kills her. And he does this like, I think it's like on the anniversary of his wife's death or something.
Mm-hmm.
Someone can DM me and tell me why I'm wrong and like what the actual details are. I haven't looked at the story since I was like a kid. But then he meets this woman named Shahrzad and he marries her. And on the night of the wedding, and she gets warned that, hey, his whole thing is... She's
informed.
Yeah, that, hey, he kills his wife, like, at the end of, like, the marriage. So before he can do it, she's like, I'm known as a storyteller, like, let me tell you a story. So she starts telling him a story. And the story becomes more and more intricate, and there's, like, these... Like the story just keeps going on, and then eventually
she's like every night I'm going to tell you one story essentially, though,
but,
isn't that? Or...
Yeah, but she never finishes the story. It always ends on a cliffhanger, and then the next night she has to finish that story, and then she finishes it in a way that it tees up another story, then tells the next story, and then ends it on a cliffhanger. So it's like HBO style storytelling in like medieval Iran.
Well,
And then-
or like Damon Lindelof's Lost, where it's just like, what is the island? It's like, you'll have to tune in next week where
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
definitely tell you.
Yeah.
And then they're like 6 seasons of
Yeah.
just edging.
Yeah. So that's the like gist of it. There was a really good mini series that I think ABC did years back that adapts it pretty well. But then they also like included a couple other things, like a couple other stories in it.
Mm-hmm.
Different versions of it have had the story of the Hunchback. It's had the stories of like one version had Aladdin, one version had
Mm-hmm.
Alibaba and the 40 Thieves.
Bearing the lead is that the original, like the most popular story to come out of pop culture is Aladdin and the genie. Like Aladdin's Wonderful Lamp is one of the
I
stories,
think so,
right?
yeah. And then there's like Sinbad and stuff. But I don't know which of these were in the original version and which ones were added later, to be honest.
I always thought Aladdin was one of the original ones. So you can connect the line from this movie to Robin Williams if you want, or Will Smith.
And each of these stories also like ties into multiple stories. Like that's why this film like constantly has like it's a game of hot potato with this body where it goes from like the party to the woods to the outside like where the cops are to outside of the hairdresser's place, and the hairdresser has this like smuggling thing, then it like ends up on the roof of the other party, then it ends up in the courtyard. Like that is done intentionally because each of those mini stories is essentially a night that Shahzad is telling the story to the king or to the prince.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Way to jump into deeper analysis without telling me.
I can give you more BTS.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, you got any more?
Yeah. Farrokh Ghafari's first film showed the working class, and the reason that he made it, according to this documentary that I saw, was because he was just really fascinated in machinery and modernization, and he thought that it would make for a very cinematic backdrop in a film.
Mm-hmm.
But the Shah was concerned, or his office was concerned, that the Soviet Union would use this film as a propaganda tool to try to convince the working class to become more socialist and communist and overthrow the Shah, because it focused on the working class. So he was forced to recut the film into a different movie called Urban Rivalry. The original title was South of the City. So from South of the City, it was recut. It took like 5 years for him to recut it, and then he re-released it as Urban Rivalry. He only completed 4 feature films.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for it is that he helped found the National Iranian Film Society.
Okay.
Which I believe is the same thing as Kanon, which Mehtash was talking about when he was on the podcast. And when he did this, he actually devoted most of his time to helping to connect other Iranian filmmakers and other Iranian artists and writers and actors and musicians to help them make their own content and to build an Iranian film society where there wasn't one.
Mm-hmm.
Because as he was making his first couple movies, he realized how difficult it was. But having seen how film offices work in Europe, he dedicated his life to trying to build an infrastructure for Iranian filmmakers in Iran. Yeah, that's why after like he made, a lot of people were surprised because this movie was actually very successful. Like a lot of people knew it and watched it, but then he basically stopped making movies after this. He made one, but aside from this, he didn't. And it was because he dedicated his life's work to connecting of other Iranian filmmakers and ensuring the success of other Iranian filmmakers.
Did he? Does it say anything whether or not he worked with Kiarostami on these projects?
I don't know. He was eventually exiled
From Iran?
Yeah. He was exiled in 79.
Oh.
Or he moved to Paris, and then he was not allowed to come back, and he died in 2006 at the age of 84. He worked as a prominent film critic for a magazine called Positif.
I really I kind of became enamored with him as both a character actor and a director in this project.
Me
so
too.
I really want to know more about him.
He's super cool.
Yeah, he's very super cool and rad.
Yeah. Radical, gnarly. If I can get a hold of the programmers at MoMA, I would love to do what they did, where he they showed the feature film followed by the short documentary about his life, because I think more people need to know about this guy. I think especially Iranian filmmakers. I think it's important for us to know about his life and what he dedicated his time and efforts to, because it's a pretty big sacrifice to be like, you know what, I'm okay with um, essentially retiring from filmmaking and dedicating my time to developing other Iranian filmmakers.
Is the documentary you saw called Faroukh's Time?
I don't know.
It seems to be a documentary from 2014 called Faroukh's Time. Dates back to the last days of a private life of Faroukh Afari and his memory of filmmaking, critique, historiography, and all this stuff.
Here, I can find it right now. Farokh Ghafari, The Centenary. It was made in 2022 by Ehsan Hunchback. Yeah, no, it was good. It was very good.
Let's go to critical reactions. I only have two small notes.
Hit me.
In 1964, the film was screened at Cannes, or Cannes.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1965, it played at Locarno.
Oh, wow. Was it the first Iranian film to play at those festivals?
According to this, no. The first Iranian film to play at Cannes was Mustafa Farzaneh's Cyrus the Great, which played in 1961. We just Googled that. That wasn't off the dome. I'm not deceiving my listeners. Deeper analysis, where we talk about our interpretation of the themes and subtext of the film and what's it all about. Farhan, take it away.
What do you want me to say? What was the last thing that we were saying? Something that you were like, save that for deeper analysis. What was it?
You said something about how each one of the houses represents one of the stories from 1001 Nights.
What?
Each one of the stories, the neighborhoods, the hair salon, the party upstairs, represents.
Oh,
kind of
yes.
reflection.
Yeah.
This is your thought?
Yeah. So essentially, I like calling it the hot potato story, because they're just passing around this dead body. But the way that it's written in 1001 Nights is each little adventure that spawns from the movement of this body is a mini story within 1001 Nights that make up the compilation of the story of the Hunchback. So in this film, each time the body moves from one place to another, it's an adaptation of that. The big difference, and I wonder why he did this, is, you know, when they're like, oh, we're going to take him to a doctor, but they're not able to make it and the directions are wrong and they end up with a hairstylist. In the original text, they do get to a doctor.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But in this, it was changed to a hairstylist, and I don't know why.
Right, yeah.
But I thought it was funny, and it was definitely a change that it was something that I wasn't expecting, especially because when you're like introduced to it, you're seeing a dialogue scene between mannequins.
Yeah. Yeah, my only like deep interpretation of it is that it's clearly, doing its version of a French farce, a slapstick comedy in the vein of Naked Gun. And maybe, you could probably extrapolate something about like how the director's kind of taking the themes of death and tragedy and playing it with severe lightness. He's defying or almost refusing to look at these themes in a dark and morose lens. You'd think like if someone's like, I got a film from you, black and white film from the 60s from Iran, and it's like themes of death and themes of tragedy.
Yeah.
What is this film? But this is such a lighthearted romp. There's something to say that maybe this is just like a film that was the intention is to like spit in the face of death and fear around death and just be like, let's just have fun with these subjects instead.
Yeah, maybe. I liked also that it did adapt part of 1001 Nights, because we do have a history of storytelling in our culture. So to me, it was really nice to see that reflected here. I would love to see more stories from 1001 Nights and from Shahnameh be adapted into movies and into shows by Iranian filmmakers, and whether that be set in medieval times or in ancient times or adapted to more modern settings. There's a gold mine of stories there that we can adapt and build on. So I found it really interesting in a positive way that he adapted this story from 1001 Nights and gave it, like you said, this like French farce twist, which I guess if it's like an Iranian French farce, would we just call it a farce?
Farsi.
A farsi farce?
Farsi farce or farsi.
I think you could call it a farce because like
farce.
Parse farce, yeah.
Was there anything at the MoMA screening that was there like a sort of a preamble or like Q&A afterwards that not Q&A obviously with the director, but like Was there any sort of talk before and after the film?
I don't know if it was introduced because I ran into a friend outside the theater as I was going in. So I actually got in like, I missed the first 2 shots of the film.
Yeah.
So I missed the first 10 seconds of the film. So I don't know if they introduced it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, instead of doing a Q&A, they showed the documentary about his life.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to best scene.
Yeah.
I've been waiting all episode to talk about this.
Okay. What's your favorite scene?
Hands down, my favorite scene. And every time you brought it up, I've stayed silent because I just want to gush about this now. When you first meet, his character's name is Manuch, too. It's not Manucher, it's Manuch.
It's probably
that's what it is in IMDb.
It's probably short for Manucher, I would guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's some other name that, again, people are going to DM me and be like, no, it's a different name. Okay.
Cover all your bases and all your grounds to make sure you're pre-responding to every comment.
Yeah.
This Manuch is played by the director himself, Farrokh Ghafari. And man, his introduction, it's like he's sweeping up the hair salon, and his dialogue to himself and all the editing is cutting to the various mannequins in the play, in the store, as if these mannequins are speaking to one another. It's so good, so funny. And then they slowly reveal that it's a man muttering to himself about what was that noise outside? Is it the people partying? And then you realize he kind of explains out loud that he's excited to go on this trip and he's going to go to Europe airplane. He doesn't say Chamadun. He says Europe airplane over and over again. He leans his head on the mannequin's face. I love everything about the scene because then it cuts to the sound of the engine running and the plane in the air.
Yeah.
Not to cut away that he's on the plane. It's just a picture of a plane he has in his back office. And the sound of the engine being him shaving his beard is such a good first 45 seconds to introduce a character. It's so well written.
Yeah.
دیگه وقت زیادی تا حرکت هواپیما نمونده. آره جونی. حرکت هواپیما برای اروپا. میفهمی؟ اروپا. هواپیما. اروپا. هواپیما.
Honestly, like, I don't know. It just like this. I did not realize when I was watching the scene, especially the first time, that this is the director. He's what a scene stealer too. Like, I just really, really like this character, and I really like the scene, and it's hands down my favorite scene in the entire film.
Yeah. No, I loved it. And I remember, like, because I got to watch it with an audience, right?
Yeah.
So when that mannequin scene comes up, everybody was just like, at first everyone's like quiet and like trying to figure it out. And then once it cuts to like the second mannequin and the third mannequin, people start like laughing more and more and more. And then when you get the reveal that like, oh, it's a guy who's tweaking these mannequins and whatever, people started laughing even more.
What's your best scene? Is that your favorite scene?
No, my favorite scene is it's such a small scene. I love it for again, it's like something that you would see in like Naked Gun or like Airplane or Pink Panther.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the scene where the motorcyclist who doesn't have a motorcycle, he like gets the papers, and then the two shifty-eyed guys like come chasing after him, and he like runs up a wall, and then he like books it through somebody's house, like someone's bedroom. And as he's running through the bedroom, he sees this old man. He like wakes him up, and he's like, "Call the cops! There's two people chasing me!" And then he jumps out the window and he leaves. And then the guy looks, and then the two guys come running in after him, and then they run out. And then he turns over, pulls out the phone, which is like conveniently placed right beside his bed. Keep in mind that, like, first of all, not everybody would have a phone in their house at this time in Iran. You would probably like go to a post office to make your call. But not only does he have a phone in his house, the phone is like in his bed, basically. Like, turns over, pulls out the phone, calls the police, and he's like, "Oh, there's a guy you're trying to steal." And then he's like, "Oh, 1 second." And then he takes his dentures and he puts them in, and then they're like, and then he's like, "Oh, there's a guy here who just got chased through my house by 2 other people."
بگو زود بیام کمک. به کلانتری فهمیدی؟ از این
الو، کلانتری توجه بفرمایید. خواهش میکنم اجازه بدید. قربان خوب توجه بفرمایید 2 نفر عقب یه آقای بله یه آقای کت چرمی کردن.
And I just thought it was so funny. The visuals of like this guy running in, waking up this old man, the phone right there, the 2 guys who chase after him.
Yeah.
And then needing to stop to put the dentures in to do the call again. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to do a second runner up for best scene is when the cops arrive because they hear there's been commotion or something, and they enter the house because they enter the hair salon, and at this point, Manuch and his boss are trying to figure out what to do to dispose of the dead body, but the cops are here, so they put the corpse in one of the hair salon chairs and put one of those hair dryer machine things on top of his head.
Yeah.
They put a wig on him and they cover his face with like shaving
makeup
cream
and stuff. Yeah,
makeup and shaving cream, and then, so like the cops are in the room with the dead body, and he's like, "Oh, this is just our customer." He's like, "Why is she still here?" It's like, "Oh, because we're closed tomorrow and she needs a thing." That whole scene is so good.
And they're like flirting with her too.
Yeah,
and then they're all waiting outside for her to come out so that they can hit on her and try to pick her up.
Yeah.
And then when they're coming out, like where they disguise the body as a mannequin, they're like,
Yeah.
"What happened to that woman who was here?" Like, "Oh, she left earlier." And they're like, "What? No, we've been waiting here this whole time for her to come out. Where is she?"
Yeah.
And then they start dancing with the mannequins. Is
it not the corpse? They're dancing with the corpse, though.
One of them is with the corpse and one's with the other mannequin. And then he's like, "Stop messing with my mannequins. Blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? These are expensive."
Well, because for context, too, they decide the best way to get rid of the corpse is to start pretending they're going to pack away the mannequins in the car in front of all these cops and onlookers. So they pack the first mannequin and the second. And the third corpse, they kind of cover head to toe in a blanket and a hat and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But then when they see this, they start thinking like, "Oh, let's just fool around with the mannequins and pick them up and dance with them," or whatever. So he just picks up this corpse that's under a blanket. It's under this tarp. And he starts dancing with it and wanting to pretend to kiss it. And they're like, he's like, "Don't touch that mannequin. It's really delicate." Like, it's so farcical. Oh, man.
I'm going to throw in a runner-up for best scene is the scene with the motorcyclist where he runs over and he threatens the 2 guys who are sitting down. And then he starts doing the motorcycle noises and stuff. So good.
That's really good. Least favorite scene?
I'm going to pair this in with what didn't age well, but it's probably a little bit of that opening scene with the guy in blackface.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because he's in blackface.
Right, yeah. I had just the old man, when you first kind of meet him, he's berating his daughter who's in tears because she doesn't want to marry the person she wants. She's essentially being forced to, she's getting ready for the next day that she's going to marry someone she doesn't want to marry. She loves someone else. And the parents are like, "You're going to marry this guy." And she's like, "I don't want to marry this guy." Not only is that scene just a sudden moment of like, nothing about the scene is fun or funny, but also they have the most hideous wedding dress on her because they're like putting her on a wedding dress on her and they're covering her in Christmas lights.
Yeah.
Like all the decorations and stuff are like lights. And I'm like, this is the ugliest thing you could possibly wear to your own wedding. And she's like sobbing and they're like, "More lights, cover her in lights head to toe." I'm like, why? This is hideous.
Yeah. The weird lights sewn into the dress.
Yeah. It's like flashing like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
They've literally decorated her like a Christmas tree.
You mean a Yalda tree?
Yalda tree, yeah. Your favorite. Damn this poetry. We discussed our favorite quotes from the film. I'll go first really quickly. This is just because it really sets the stage for how silly the film was going to be. But when they first meet the old man, they ask for directions. And it's like, "There's a doctor around the corner. I once took my daughter there when she swallowed a gramophone needle." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Well, where's the directions?" He's like, "Well, it turned out that it wasn't that dangerous when she had swallowed the needle." And I'm like, "That's great. Wonderful. How do we get there?" He goes, "I guess nowadays," he's like, "you have to be more careful with those gramophone needles than you think." And they're trying to find the direction. And he goes, "I guess nowadays people wouldn't be using a gramophone. It would be something more modern." And then he's just like, "Where is the doctor?" And this guy is just going on a long-winded story about the gramophone needle. And then,
سوزن گرمافون رو هیچ وقت نباید دم دست بچه گذاشت. هیچ وقت. گرچه گرمافونا دیگه سوزن ندارن. یعنی دارن اما بهش چسبیده. ها اول برین کوچه اول دست چپ بعد کوچه دوم.
Yeah, like just such a funny line, and it's the first like really hard laugh I have in the movie.
You know what that?
So many other.
That reminds
really
me.
it.
It reminds me of some of the bits that Payam does, Payam Banifast on his Instagram, where he's trying to tell his dad a story, and then his dad's like, he's like, "Yeah," and then we went to the basketball court, and then the dad's like, "Yeah, okay, So there was this crow once that I saw, and the crow came, and he's like, "I was,
yeah,
what does this have to do with what I was saying?"
yeah,
Like it
yeah.
just reminds me of that. It was so funny.
Shout out Payo.
Yeah,
Comedic genius. That guy should be everywhere all the time. Everywhere all at once.
he was
Everything
He was-
everywhere. I
he
know.
was in the
I know.
movie.
That's why I suddenly started that sentence and realized what I was doing.
Oh my God.
He is in that film. He plays the everything bagel. Okay, so you have a favorite damn that's poetry, favorite line?
Yeah. Do you remember what I told you about it?
You said that I wouldn't suspect what it was.
Yeah. Can you guess what it is? Now that I've told you, you won't be able to, like, you wouldn't expect this to be my favorite quote. What do you think is
I don't know. I
what of
I was
everything said in this movie, what do you think is the thing that I'm least likely to be like, that's my favorite quote?
I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know.
It's where he does the motorcycle noises.
Yeah.
That's my favorite quote.
Your favorite quote is the motorcycle noises?
Yeah, because I was dying in the theater when that happened, and that was the thing that probably like stood out to me the most as I went on, because it was just so ridiculous. Because this whole movie is like absurdist comedy,
Yeah.
and that one scene in particular is probably like the most absurd out of everything that happened, and I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that's a good one. So your favorite quote in the movie is meh, 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 meh,
Yeah, I
meh.
think he actually goes wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow, 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 wow.
Let's go to favorite performance.
For me, it's Farrokh. I thought he was.
Too.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's really good, and like I don't even know. He's not the main character, right? Is he?
No, he's not.
Who is? This is truly an ensemble story,
Yeah, I the main character is the dead corpse.
right? The main character of your film is dead 10 minutes into the movie.
Yeah,
He's the titular character for sure. But yeah, he's so good. He's very charming, charismatic. He's got a Charlie Chaplin-esque kind of vibe to him. His whole look. Now that I think about it, he kind of does look like Peter Sellers too.
let me look up Peter Sellers. See his face.
Young Peter Sellers.
You know who maybe a little bit. You know who he looks like to me? He looks
Who's
like
that?
he looks like a cross between Dustin Hoffman and Stephen Colbert.
Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah. What a great performance.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Nitpicks and hot takes.
I gave mine. My like main one was
Okay, I will go with just a few like nitpicks different than. Well, wait, no, that's your what aged poorly.
but
though.
we merged that, remember?
Okay, so nitpicks, hot takes, and what aged poorly is all in one section.
Yeah.
I'll go mine then together, but I'll say my one nitpick about the film is someone needs to tell this director that a dead corpse cannot be made to stand upright, because there's multiple times in this film where the corpse just seems to be standing upright when the scene needs it to be.
Yeah.
For example, when they dress him up as a mannequin and he's kind of like the guy picks him up to dance with him. I don't know if they claim to have him hooked on a thing like a coat rack or something, but the way they're carrying him upright as a mannequin, it's just like you can't carry a corpse that way.
Yeah.
It was clearly the actor kind of helping them shuffle to the car,
Probably, yeah.
but also the guy picks it up and assumes that it's a dead body, so he's like swinging it around like a
Unless
rigor mortis.
no. What if you know how like the mannequins are sometimes strapped to like a rod? If they impaled the body from the butt to the head with the rod,
That's a possibility.
then
but-
I think it's possible. But his legs and his arms would still flail around.
That, and also later on at the garbage, they kind of drop him off in the garbage dump, which is in the back alley of the old man's house. That's when the old man sees his like silhouette standing there
Yeah.
and assumes he's a burglar, right?
Yeah.
So he hits him over the back of the head. He's just standing, like leaning up. He's leaning up against the wall, but it's leaning up like the way someone would be standing.
Yeah.
A
That's
corpse
true.
will not stand up right that way. So that's a nitpick. Unless it's rigor mortis, but I don't think rigor mortis sets in that quickly.
No, I don't think so.
What aged poorly? You said yours. I would say one of the things is there's a few moments, not too many, but there's a few moments I don't love the shot choices, and I don't know if it's a production of the time or whatever. But like, especially when they're moving the dead body disguised as a mannequin into the car, and you kind of see a bunch of quick shots from inside the car. It's extreme close up, and you kind of can't. It's like extreme close up to the point you can't even really tell what's going on. And there's a few moments like that I was like,
Yeah, that's fair.
what is happening here?
There's I think also the old timey voices
Yeah.
that obviously doesn't age very well. I mean, it's a product of the times. You know who? There's one character that doesn't have that. Can you think of who it is?
The host?
No,
The female hostess?
It's Farrokh.
Oh,
He's the only
interesting, yeah.
character that doesn't do that like fake old timey voice.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, does the host do it though?
I think so.
The woman?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes, kind of.
A little bit.
Yeah, maybe a bit.
The cringiest one for me is the two performers who stuff the Hunchback's face with food.
Yeah.
Those are the two most over the top ones, and the two that like I remember watching that scene and being like, oh man, if this whole movie is about these two, like this is gonna be a rough time.
Yeah.
And thankfully they are only the first adventure with the corpse, and then they're off.
Double feature lineup. I can go first.
Hit me.
I actually was going to mention this off the top of the podcast when I was introducing the film, but it might as well be fine. This is essentially Weekend at Bernie's.
Oh my God. Yeah.
To the point where I'm wondering if Weekend at Bernie's saw this film and was inspired by it.
Yeah.
Because A, it could work as a fun double feature lineup to watch this with Weekend at Bernie's and be like, oh, here's a Hollywood, Florida version of them doing that. But B, also, I was going to just off the top be like, for those who haven't seen it and want a picture of what this is a 1965 Iranian version of Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly finding really creative ways to hide the dead body, make it seem like he's alive, make it seem like a mannequin, moving from it. Yeah. So that's what this film is. If you're interested in watching and haven't seen it, and that corollary sparks some interest, 1965 Iranian Weekend at Bernie's, that would be my double feature. Top that.
I don't think I can. I think that's got to be it.
Yeah, that's a fun
Weekend at Bernie's. That's really good.
Can this be made into a modern Hollywood remake?
I guess it already was.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
I would say not only can it be, because it has been, but I implore this to be, because I think if Hollywood remade this in modern days, done in English, but by an Iranian director with an Iranian cast.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still make it set in the U.S., or whatever. It can even be set in Iran, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see a modern remake of this done, like Weekend at Bernie's style, but with an Iranian director, Iranian cast. Because
does the Iranian director also play the hairstylist?
Totally.
Nice.
It'd be really fun, and I think it could be like, you know, now you'd have all the work of like David Zucker, the Naked Gun films, all those kind of spoof movies too.
Yeah.
That's your groundwork too. All right, cool. Final thoughts and grades.
This movie really resonated with me, and not for reasons that you might think. Like, it's not like it was deeply emotional and moving. It resonated with me because of what it was able to do differently. It kind of recognized what Iranian cinema was at the time, and it made a conscious decision to do something different and to take elements of film from other parts of the world and try to create something new while still infusing a lot of Iranian history and sensibilities, whether that be that old-timey voice, which I would argue is actually pretty dated now, or even the use of 1001 Nights as the main inspiration behind the plot.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I would give this film an A.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's maybe not surprised. How many A's have you given so far?
I have given 2 A's. I gave an A to The Deer, and I gave an A+ to No Bears.
I see. Yeah, nice.
What did you think I would give it?
I thought it was deserving of an A.
Yeah.
Because I give it an A as well.
Right.
I actually thought, but towards the end of this podcast, I figured you'd give it an A, but I would have thought you would have given a little bit more criticism towards the editing and stuff like I did.
Oh, just
like those like
like
close shots. Like I just thought you would have
saw
had
it.
more of those No, I mean, even like I thought when I was expecting what you might say about this film, I thought you'd have a little bit more nitpicky thoughts about the way it was shot.
Sorry, I meant before we jumped on our call.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I really liked it. It's an A because I feel like it's actually stands out as kind of a film that hasn't been. We will have to do a deeper dive into better, like more Iranian films, more Iranian comedies. Like specifically, like I'd love to do The Landlord at some point. I really love that movie, but in terms of like it stapling its name to like the culture of Iranian cinema, this is truly a standout. And sort of sad that it's not as well known because, like you mentioned, like a lot of Iranian cinephiles you talked to hadn't heard of it. It's kind of gone under the radar, and it's great that MoMA was doing a presentation of it. But yeah, for me, I would say, final thoughts on this is Night of the Hunchback. It's, what can you say? It's the Weekend of Bernie's of its time. It's an Iranian tribute to French farce drama and an adaptation of classic Middle Eastern folklore and told through a slapstick lens with an absurdist clown-like performance throughout. But more importantly, Farrokh Ghafari wants to laugh in the face of trauma.
Ha 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 ha.
It spits in the face of tragedy and is tickled by the thought of death.
Do you want me to make sound effects for those two?
Yes, yeah. What was your sound effect for tickle? That's giggle, not tickle.
And then you said spit, which is just
Yeah. To Mr. Farrokh Ghafari, genius comedic performance. Essentially, one of the lead actors of the film. He very much deserves to have his film and legacy be viewed by modern Iranian cinephiles because this film is glowing report and reviews and remarks from Farhan and I as we both give it an A. So, yeah, can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, very good film. Big fan. That's an A average from us overall.
Mm-hmm. This episode is going to be our last film of the year. So until then, this has been Cinema Rex Podcast. I am Kaveh.
And I am Farhan.
Be'omid Didar. And Farhan, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Happy Yalda to you and to all of our listeners. We are recording this on Shab Yalda, and Kaveh continues to insist on saying Merry Christmas despite it being Yalda. You can reach out to Kaveh in his DMs. They're always open for your criticisms.
It's beginning to look a lot like
Yalda.
Christmas. Every day of the year. And then we'll go to music.
Yeah.
Music for Cinema Rex was written and performed by Sohail Set Mitra.